By the time we reach midlife, we all have some of the brain disease that causes dementia, but only some of us will go on to experience the symptoms of cognitive decline later in life. Today, I want to discuss your risk of mental decline in midlife and what it tells you about your chances of going on to develop dementia. Hello, I'm neuroscientist Dr. Ben Webb, sharing brain advice for a mentally healthy and happy midlife. Welcome to episode 74 of Better Brain, Better You. How are you doing? Having a good start to the new year, I hope. And thank you so much for joining me for today's episode on your risk of mental decline in midlife and chances of going on to develop dementia. So dementia leads to cognitive decline and memory loss, most often from your 60s onwards. But most people think dementia is an inevitable part of getting older. But a wave of brain health science research over the past 15 years has shown that dementia is not a natural part of getting older and shows a clear path for how to protect yourself against dementia. So to help you protect yourself against the mental decline and memory loss caused by dementia, I want to invite you to join me for a free masterclass on how to prevent dementia. So this 3-part masterclass called How to Rewire Your Brain to Prevent Dementia starts next week on Tuesday the 18th of January. So you'll discover why Alzheimer's disease is not an inevitable part of getting older, how you can reduce your risk of getting dementia, and the 6 pillars of brain health that actually help you to prevent dementia. So you can register for this free online masterclass at ologyonlinecourses.com/masterclass. That's ologyonlinecourses.com/masterclass. It'd be great if you could join me to find out about the latest science showing us how to prevent dementia. So by the time we reach midlife, we all have some of the brain disease that causes dementia, but only some of us will go on to experience the symptoms of this debilitating condition. So why is that? And what are your chances of going on to develop mental decline? Well, the truth is, dementia doesn't suddenly appear. In fact, the seeds for dementia are sown inside your brain years, perhaps even decades before you'll ever experience any symptoms. But one of the early overt signs of mental decline for some people in midlife is what's called mild cognitive impairment. So about 2 in 10 people over the age of 65 have mild cognitive impairment. So that's a noticeable change in your memory, problem-solving abilities, or attention. And this is caused in part by the same brain changes that occur in dementia. While mild cognitive impairment isn't severe enough to disrupt a person's way of living, it does significantly impair your mental function, and 5 to 10% of people with it will go on to develop dementia. Why some people with mild cognitive impairment develop dementia while others don't has long been a mystery. But a recent research has identified several factors that determine whether a person is more or less likely to develop mild cognitive impairment and go on to develop dementia. This research might also give us a strong clue about who is most likely to develop dementia. So let's start first by looking at the factors that the research found was linked to a lower risk of developing mild cognitive impairment. So the time a person spent in education was one factor that decreased a person's risk of mild cognitive impairment. So people who had an average of about 11 and a half years in education were 5% less likely to develop mild cognitive impairment compared with those with only 10 years in education. Unfortunately, research didn't actually differentiate between whether the education was at school or higher education. But one theory for this link is because a longer time in education is linked to a higher socioeconomic status, which may mean a person has better access to a healthier lifestyle and better healthcare, for example. Another theory, though, which is actually gaining a lot of traction, is that education helps the brain to build more neurons and connections, which then helps the brain to maintain good function. And this helps the brain to compensate for any changes that may happen as a result of mild cognitive impairment, such as memory loss later in life. So people who are more physically active or social also had a lower risk of developing mild cognitive impairment, and moderate intensity exercise, such as swimming, during midlife or late life can actually help to reduce the risk of mild cognitive impairment as well. And the protective effect of exercise could be explained by beneficial structural changes that we know happen inside your brain, like promoting the growth of new neurons as a result of exercise. And there's growing evidence that also shows that being social can really help to maintain brain health and lower your risk of premature death. So people who have a higher income have a lower chance of developing mild cognitive impairment as well, compared with those people who made less money. So income is probably linked to a lower risk of cognitive impairment for similar reasons to education, since people with a higher income are much more likely to be able to afford better healthcare and afford a better diet and lifestyle. They may also live in areas where environmental factors such as pollution have less effect on them. This is really important because there's lots of evidence now that shows that pollution may also be linked to conditions such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So the research also found several factors that increase your risk of developing cognitive impairment. So they include the presence of one or two or more copies of the APOE E4 gene. So this finding is consistent with previous research, which also shows that this gene can increase your risk of dementia. So people with the APOE E4 gene are around 3 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than those with a different variant of this gene. It's thought that this is because this variant makes people more likely to accumulate the toxic protein deposits inside their brain, which is a hallmark and associated with Alzheimer's disease. Researchers also think this gene only causes harm in older age as well. So people with one or more chronic health conditions such as heart disease, depression or diabetes also have a greater risk of developing mild cognitive impairment. So diabetes, we know, starves the brain of the energy it needs to function properly. And other conditions such as heart disease are also known to increase the risk of cognitive decline. So it's also possible that the increased burden of having several health conditions might mean that someone engages less in their usual daily activities or social life. So both of these can accelerate the decline in brain health. So we should remember, however, that mild cognitive impairment isn't necessarily a prelude to dementia. In fact, many people who have mild cognitive impairment return to completely normal brain function. And this is almost certainly down to lifestyle changes after diagnosis, such as exercising more and eating a brain healthy diet, which have improved people's outcomes. So our brains are dynamic, and keeping them active throughout our lives is really important to maintain good brain function. So while there are some risk factors, such as our age, that we can't change, keeping active and following a healthy lifestyle is the best way to lower your risk of mild cognitive impairment and your chances of going on to develop dementia. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, to help you protect yourself against the mental decline and memory loss caused by dementia, I want to invite you to join me for a free masterclass on how to prevent dementia. So this 3-part masterclass starts next week on Tuesday the 18th of January. And in this masterclass, which is called How to Rewire Your Brain to Prevent Dementia, you're going to discover why Alzheimer's disease is not an inevitable part of getting older, how to reduce your risk of ever getting this debilitating condition, and the 6 pillars of brain health that will really help you to prevent dementia. So you can register for this free online masterclass at ologyonlinecourses.com/masterclass. That's ologyonlinecourses.com/masterclass. I'd be honoured if you could join me to discover the steps you can take right now to look after your brain and prevent the mental decline caused by dementia. So thanks so much for tuning in today and spending time with me. Take really good care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you next time.